Okay, today I would like to continue with the idea that we said last week a little bit. It's a repetition, but an elaboration on the book of Viktor Frankl on the logotherapy. But first I will start, of course, to position this book as it is a shir, not a psychology course, is to position it in the Torah, in some connection with the Torah. We explained the difference between Hebraism and Haredism already, and in the sense that Hebraism focuses on us being a mensch. The idea is that we should behave like human beings and knowing what is the element of being a mensch, while Haredism is more developing our connection, which we have with Hashem, is to grow this connection with Hashem, and we will see how those two are combined together. When you look on the story of the creation, we already said that the Rebbeinu Shloim created the world in 6 days, and he stopped on Shabbos. So he says clearly that he stopped on Shabbos, so he created the Tohu Voyu. So in other words, when he created, the world was created as a Tohu Voyu, chaos and darkness. So in other words, the world that was created originally was not a nice world. It was a horrible world. It was an ugly world. And Hashem slowly, in 6 days, separated this ugliness and made order. And then he stopped for Shabbos. On Shabbos, he did not continue. In other words, what you can see from that is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have continued, but he didn't continue. So in other words, there was still a job to be done. There was still a moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have separated something or done something which was to be mashlim the world, but he did not do it. And so therefore, why didn't he do it? Because at the end, he created humans, and he said to the humans, you should continue my job of what I've left over. So the Yom HaShabbos is a moment where HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped doing the Tikkun Olam, stopped creating this correction of the world, and he gave to the humans to continue that Tikkun Olam. The word Tikkun Olam, Chazal say it explicitly as well, is Asher Boro Elokim La'asois. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Boro in the past sense, La'asois in the future sense. In other words, it is for us, this is what Kabbalists call the Olam Ha'asir. We are in a world where we have to do a Tikkun. The Kabbalists, however, see the Tikkun as being a Tikkun of higher spirits, the Tikkun of Olamois. You have the Olamois Elyonim, and that when we do a Tikkun, when we do a mitzvah here, they see the mitzvahs as being the way that we are going to be metak in the world. As you know, the Arizal introduced the first time the concept of Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, and that this breaking of the vessels during the creation, something went wrong, and the vessels broke, and it is our job is to be metaken, the mitzoitzas, the klippos, as they call the klippos on the kelim that broke, and through the mitzvahs we are metaken the world, and therefore this is called a tikkun olam. This is also what the Kabbalists and the Hasidim call the olam hatikun. We are in a world of tikkun, but they see it more from a spiritual perspective. So they see it really from a worldly, from the mitzvahs and the Torah and the Tag mitzvahs. They are all helping in the correction of the world. So this is a very Haredism point of view, but there is also what I call the Hebraic point of view, which is Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, which explains that the Tikkun Olam is also physical. So it's not only through the mitzvahs that we can be metak in the world, but it is mainly through the chibshuho. So there is a mitzvah, Kodesh Baruch Hu tells us to control the world, to continue and controlling the world from its own disasters, making the world a better place by doing things which are improving this world in how it is in the physical world. So it is controlling nature, understanding nature, and controlling it for making the world a better place. So we continuously have this force in us. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us an obligation, it means that we have it inherited in us, is to make this world a better place. We have a drive to make the world a better place. And you see indeed that the world is improving dramatically in technology, in diseases. We have, Baruch Hashem, we have toilets at the home, we have running water, we have electricity. I don't know if we would like to live 50 years ago. I don't know if you would like to live in the Middle Ages. We all are very happy with how we are today. Is because the world has improved tremendously because of that drive to always make a tikkun olam. So the tikkun olam is really a way of improving the world within the element of disasters and physical problems and diseases and things like that. So this is the way the Hebraism, from Hebraism way perspective, the world has to be metuken not only from spiritually one, but mainly from the point of view of correcting the world as it is.
Just to summarize, so the Frum, I would say, forget the first time you used.
Charidim,
yeah. So they say Hashem did the world perfectly, like he ends what he wanted to do.
And we only ruining it.
No. Our step is to, let's say, on holy level to make it higher.
So the world already came to a perfection, and the only thing, unfortunately, that man can do is destroy world. And so we are going into destruction. Nostalgia. No, but that's also maybe a way of.
Just keep to what you said.
Yeah. Okay.
It's already upset.
Yeah.
But no, because then it's, on the second equation is basically the world is not perfect. We have to change physically, like an Amaret theory. The Amaret part is what we have to do. And just because that's the world basically. And besides that, there is a bonus for some people.
There's a bonus. It's also to man nitablo. The man nitablo that you will also get a bonus. You'll get a reward once you've done it correctly within the ways that the Torah is giving you. So the Torah is actually what the Torah is, but you're jumping ahead of what I want to say. But the Torah is what we call the principles and the constraints in which you have to navigate to do the tikkun olam.
But to change the world physically.
To change the world physically, make this world a better place. Yes.
So you use basically, we can summarize the Torah to basically kilaim, this kind of stuff.
So, okay, that's. But also le signoi, le sachmoi. That's also part.
The Torah is the signoi.
No, okay, but still, the Torah tells you that these are the rules. So also the basic rules of humanity is also part of the Torah.
Okay, so that's the difference. One is spiritual, the other is physical.
Yeah. So you have what is called the two drivers. You have what is called the derech Hashem. This is volachto bidrocho. This is the halacha derech Hashem, and then you have the derech eretz. Derech eretz is what you say the amo oretz. Derech eretz is really what has to be done in order to do the tikkun olam. Derech eretz. Let me finish because now I want to continue. Is the Rambam, but I can't find it inside because I'm looking different Rambams. I didn't have the time to find a different print. But the Rambam very clearly says that derech eretz is actually working, is what this has to do with the working umnus. In other words, it's an element of yishuv olam. Calls it yishuv olam. Working is being yishuv. Working is not parnosa for making money, but the working has to be for a yishuv olam, making the world a better place. The money that you get is, of course, a bonus. Is on top of the work. But at the end of the day, your work has to be a yishuv olam. That's why Mesachek Bekubia. He is not apostle etus because he's a person that is not, although he makes money, maybe he's even a Talmid Chochem, maybe he learns all day, and then for 1 hour a day he goes in the Mesachek Bekubi, is apostle etus because he did not participate in the Yishuv Olam. He does not do together with Yishuv Olam, and therefore he is not considered a person which. It is also very interesting. Is that
just the Rambam? One part, yes, but there is another part of the Rambam. But he said, what is the purpose of the humankind? Is a knowledge. It's not work or something.
Yeah. So you have. It's true that there are always two drivers, and those two drivers are what we call the tension. What he also calls the tension in your brain. You always need a tension. Two drivers which are forcing you, which are pushing you in two directions. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to drive you to move forward. One tension is what Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik called the man of faith. We have a will to know Hashem, etc. And the other one is to create the world and make the world a better place. Those two are tension. The two are a bit conflicting with each other. And the idea is that you find the right balance. That you should not forget that you have to know Chochmas Hashem and not forget that you have to do Yishuv Olam. So the Rambam says he recommends you to be marbe in Chochmas Hashem and to be mamayit in working. No, that's what he says, Mefurish.
No, but he says somewhere, I can find it here.
Yeah.
He says that the goal of humankind, the goal, not is to
Das
learn.
Hashem.
Is to learn, and all the rest, people that cannot learn stuff, is to help him to go
Okay.
to this direction.
That's what the Rambam.
Exclude what you said at the
So the Rambam, indeed, and he says it on another place in Pirush HaMishnah, is in either Sanhedrin Gimel Gimel or in Ovos Beis Beis. I made a mistake, that's why I didn't find it. So the way he says that indeed you have to reduce the working so that you can learn more. So indeed he says that the working. But Rabbeinu Tam, that's why I wanted to go. Don't let me go, please. Rabbeinu Tam says clearly that the Iker is the Derech Eretz and the Talmud Torah is the Tofel. And that's a famous Rabbeinu Tam, nobody understands. But from this perspective, we can understand that he says the Iker is the Tikkun Olam, and the Talmud Torah and all the mitzvahs are the Tofel, are what I call the Tavlin. They give you a sense of to remain within the morality, that you are sure this is the principles and the constraints of the way that you are going to do the Tikkun Olam. So what about the Kollel learning? So the Chazal call somebody who learns in Kollel Batlonim. Why? Because they are mevatel on this thing. So the Chazal say that you're allowed to have Asor Batlonim. You're allowed to... What? Don't push it. Yeah. So okay, you're right. Yeah, but they're called batlonim. Why they call batlonim? The word batlonim. Yeah, because they're not busy with the issue of oilam. Yeah, you have to have asloro batlonim. Yeah, it's an obligation. Okay, right. I correct myself. I retract myself, and I agree with you that it is the other way around. But in any way, the word that we say batlonim is indeed
more than 10 people in the
no, I didn't say that. So he corrected me. So I'm not going to go into that. But I'm just focusing on the word batlonim. Also the fact that the Beis HaMedrash was outside of the city, not inside of the city, like the churches are in the middle of a city, and then around it is the church, and the city is around. By us, the Beis HaMedrash was outside. People had to go outside to go and daven. This is all elements that also point you to that direction, that the Iker is the Derech Eretz, according to Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Elchanan clearly in Maseches Yoma says the opposite. He says it's not true, that the Iker is the Torah and the Derech Eretz is only a Tofel. And Tosis Yeshonim ends up saying he brings argument for both. And then mainly they know, in contrary, they always bring arguments against Rabbeinu Tam. And then V'chein Nire Iker is like Rabbeinu Elchanan, who actually are saying, and this is how we live today, is that we say Talmud Torah is the etzem the Iker, and the working is only a tofel. But there is the idea of Hebraism, which actually pushes forward to saying now the Derech Eretz is the Iker, and that is how a lot of the Torah, with the Chasam Sofer also, who says that when Mashiach will come in Eretz Yisrael, this will not be how we are today. Today in Golus we have to learn Torah, but once Mashiach will come and we will live in Eretz Yisrael, then in Eretz Yisrael, the idea is that we should not let the Goyim do our job, not let the Arabs do our job, but we will have to do all the job. Carpenters will have to be Jewish carpenters, builders, etc. All these things will have to be done by the Jew, because by definition, the idea here again of the building and of doing an asiyah has to be from Jews and not from other perspective. Each one of them has an obligation to add. So Rabbeinu Tam holds that the Derech Eretz is the Iker and Talmud Torah is a Tofel. Tofel meaning it's only, and the Chasam Sofer also says in Parsha Shoftim and also in Maseches Sukkah that when Mashiach will come, we will not be koilel, there will be only workers, and there will be some Levim and Yehuda and Yevim that will be doing the Torah, so that they will be able to teach the workers to. What? Sorry. No, so all the other Rishonim disagree with Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Elchanan, he says no, and that's also what we are living today. Today, the ideal Jew is a Jew that learns in Koilel, and we are the B'diavad. We are, because never we have to work.
No, but I think that the world was set. That's great.
Yeah, but it became today. Yeah. But today it became an ideal. It became an ideal. That's what I'm saying. Haredism is what I'm talking about today. Today became the norm, and whoever works is some never, you know, a subhuman.
I agree with you that this is the problem.
Yeah.
Because there is not one single gatherer that gets out of it. They do nothing. And to be a real Valel, you have to learn 18 hours a day.
Right, 18 hours,
We
exactly.
don't have a lot of Batlanim in
Basically, you have understood my sheer, basically. You understood what I'm trying to say.
Paradox is that the politics basically are against us.
Basically, yeah, because they would like to remain in the Torah. This is also Klal Yisrael didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because they had the Mon, they had everything they needed. This going to Eretz Yisrael is a big challenge, the change management. You really, why would I go to Eretz Yisrael, starting to fight, having to build, while I have everything I need? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Mon, gave us clothes to wear. So why would I want to go and work and having all the problems of my life when I don't have any problems? That is always the difference between religiosity. Religiosity gives you easy life, and the real work is where it's hard. And yeah. And then we to maybe just now I know it's not a reference in halachic purpose, but I just like the last sentence. If there's one book which I liked about, in one sentence that I would really like to put forward from this book is man is capable of changing the world for the better if possible, and of changing himself for the better if necessary. In other words, you can say that the Derech Hashem is all about what maybe I should have said it, but the Derech Hashem, what is Derech Hashem? It's about changing yourself. What is Derech Hashem? It's about changing the midas, like the Rambam says. The person has to change himself first. He has to make sure that he is a good person, and the knowledge of Hashem makes him humble, makes him remember who Hashem is and what he has to be grateful for. So this is what we call Derech Hashem. Derech Hashem helps you also in the development of yourself, while the Derech Eretz helps you in changing the world for the better. So you always have those two drivers. I have to change myself as becoming a better person, but mainly, according to Rabbeinu Tam, I have to change the world in making the world a better place. And this is a bit his word, is that man is capable of changing the world for the better if possible. So whenever there's an opportunity, you have to do it, but changing himself for the better if necessary. It's only if you feel that you are lacking of some certain kind of problem, spiritual problem, then you have to do whatever you need to do in order to regain the better of yourself. But the main important part is changing the world for the better. So this is really the idea of what Rabbeinu Tam says, that the Iker is the Derech Eretz, and the Tofel, what adds to it to make sure that you don't worsen yourself, is to learn Torah in order for you to understand better the main purpose. Yeah. No, if possible means, in other words, for any possibility. No, if possible, but changing himself for the better if necessary. So it really makes a difference. If necessary means I really feel, I'm lacking a bit of emunah, so you have to go and learn because that's necessary. To change the world, you have to change the world if possible. Means whenever you have a possibility, you have to change the world anytime. So if possible doesn't mean optional, because I think he's playing with the word.
Yeah,
it changes
when necessary. So if someone doesn't feel necessary,
no, because that's the problem, is that the Torah helps you, because the problem is that the person that is busy with only the Eretz, he loses after time this concept of the between das bein tov l'ra, and then at some point he doesn't realize that he's being completely off the derech, and therefore a person has to learn Torah, because the Torah will keep this barometer, not the barometer, the compass to the right direction. The Torah is a compass.
And just in order to know what's
Also, yeah, exactly. So that's the how do I say that?
If you find it necessary, then you have to.
No.
you have to
But
know.
the halacha has increased dramatically over the years. So it is during this religiosity purpose, when we moved from a nation to a religious, that suddenly the Shulchan Aruch became from Tayag mitzvahs that can be written in so much became a Shulchan Aruch so much. But it's I'm not, if you understand what I mean, okay? I'm just
just to know that Talmud was
yeah.
It's
Yeah, so it needs to be taught, and but everybody according to his needs. So if somebody is a farmer, he has to learn Hilchos Charisha and all the things. He doesn't have to learn Binyan and Stira, maybe, I don't know, according to what he needs. That's the job of the Levine. So we saw that so the Avodas Hashem is in essence either Derech Hashem and Derech Eretz, or Derech Eretz with Derech Hashem. The idea of this book, in order to come back to, because I could continue with the Beis Elokim from the Mabit that explained that the Tefillah is only for everything that is necessary, which is not in your Rishus, meaning that it has to be necessary in performing what you want to perform. In other words, it is for performing this Derech Eretz. So it is in order to help you in fulfilling a task. So it's much better if you daven to Hashem that you want absolutely something to happen, that you can associate it and focus on making this a purpose in your life. In other words, making this as a part of your part of the Tikkun Olam, and we'll come back to that, in order to ask Hashem, please, in order for me to be a metak in the world, I need that, because I cannot do it by myself. Because if I can do it by myself, you have to work, right? I cannot ask for Hashem, please give me a BMW just out of because I like to have it. No, it has to be a necessity, and it's also not possible for me to do it. If it is possible for you to work harder, to make more money, then it's not, it's birshuscho, and it has to also be a tzoyre. So it has to be kind of a certain necessity in the tikkun olam. Now, the therapy perspective from logotherapy is the whole book is basically a beginning a logotherapy. He already had this book ready, he had the kind of a book ready, but the manuscript, he wrote a whole book about the logotherapy. But when he went into the concentration camps, they actually, he hid it in his coat and they threw away his coat. So he lost his manuscript. And basically, he realized that he had a great opportunity for him to live and to see and to analyze his whole life and in the concentration camp, and to see if it is if his theory is right, of course. But also at some point he became very desperate, and then he opened up a coat that he got from somebody who went to the gas chambers, and he opened up, he felt there is a piece of paper, he opened up this piece of paper, and there it was written a page of a siddur which says Shema Yisrael. And from that moment on, he realized that Hashem is telling him that now it's time to practice what you have been writing. So he realized that it is a moment for him to practice everything that he actually was writing about, and therefore he developed, he must manage to keep on living and finding a meaning of life. Last week we explained it, and I will continue explaining it. When you are in a concentration camp, there's only one thing that keeps you going, and this is your will to life. It's the only thing. Pleasure you won't have, maybe a little bit of bread when you're very hungry, then you have the pleasure, but otherwise it's really the willing of life. And still, while the survival mode got switched on in a concentration camp, a lot of people committed suicide, a lot. It was a big problem for the Germans because they needed those living Jews for labor. So they wanted them to go to the factories, but a lot of Jews did not want that to happen, and so they committed suicide. And so there was a whole thing. That's why he was lucky to be able to be asked as being a psychiatrist to keep those Jews alive as long as possible. And so he had this opportunity to do that. But how come that when you are only thinking of living, surviving, that you are also committing suicide? And his theory was that there is a will for meaning, that there is a will for meaning which is much higher than the will to pleasure and the will to power. So when he was in the school of Freud and Adler, they developed that the human beings are being driven by the will to pleasure and the will to power. So that we all want power and we all want pleasure. We are driven by we don't want to have pain, so we avoid pain and we try to maximize our pleasure and also our power, which I think is probably Adler, which is focusing on the power. I didn't check that, but from his wording, I'm assuming that. And so he said that this is not enough. He said already before the war that the most important is the will for meaning. And the will for meaning means that I have something, a meaning in my life that will always give me something I'm going to look forward to the future. In other words, I'm doing now something in order to make sure that something that I'm have a meaning for something which is bigger than myself and that is going to make the world a better place. And that is something which is within ourselves, which comes together with the Ripshur Ores, which is the Tikkun Olam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us the Ripshur, that you should be kovesh the world. It means, in other words, majestic man. It means that it is part of our, as a human being, we have that. We have the only ones, even the animals, who also have a will to pleasure and also have a will to power. What they don't have is a will for meaning. To have a meaning they don't have. Only human beings have this will for meaning. And so therefore he believed that the only reason why some people survived and other people committed suicide is the difference was a will for meaning. Those who killed themselves, they did not have the meaning in their lives. They did not look for meaning in their lives, and therefore they didn't see a meaning to their lives. But there is a very, very strong will for meaning, which actually is what he developed in his book, is that there is a meaning, and we will see what the meaning means. But in any case, this is means something that helps the world to become a better place. And
Just to say thanks for
exactly, yeah. But this losing the mind is also part of the process of letting go, of not understanding a meaning. If you don't have a meaning to life, then you are losing your mind. So it is
the person that has it and he's and
yeah.
Side,
Yeah.
that's directly for weeks,
Yeah,
months,
then automatically he will lose. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even the religious Jews, when they did it, is also for Kiddush Hashem, basically. But okay, when they commit suicide, it's a bit more difficult. But in any case, when they went to their death, then it's also Kiddush Hashem. So there is also, even in death, there is a bit of to explain you a little bit, to make it for Megillas Esther, to explain it, because we are in the moments of Megillas Esther, is we already explained that a few times, that Megillas Esther is the last of the books of the Torah. So why? What is the purpose of the book? Emmanuel Levinas also, and I will meet Hashem, I will explain him, but he also speaks a lot about this Megillas Esther as a discussion whether or not to add it in our Tanakh, which was Esther that wanted to add the Tanakh, and the Chazal were not very happy, they were not very convinced. At the end, they added it to the Tanakh. But this discussion of why not adding it, why adding it, it's something which Emmanuel Levinas is going into a lot. But I would like to just finding also there must be a meaning to adding Megillas Esther. What is the meaning? So I explained to you at the time that as long as there was a Gilui HaShechina, as long as God was present, there was no question of a meaning of life. The meaning of life was not necessary because we had a directly connection and a view of what Hashem wants from us. Each one knew exactly what he needed to do. There were Nevi'im, there were 600,000 Nevi'im, there was a lot of Nevi'im in the world, and each one we knew directly what Hashem wanted from us. The moment that the Nevi'im went down, that the Nevi'us is disappeared, from that moment on, then we suddenly, the darkness started, and that's at the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, darkness started. That moment, philosophy took over. The first philosophers in Greek started, I think, the year, I forgot his name again, the first philosopher. Sorry? No, before that. No, also not. No. A short name. Talos. I think Talos was born, I think, the year after the Churban Abayis. So this is really when darkness started, that suddenly we had the need for why we are living, what's for, all the questions that we all ask ourselves. Before that, we didn't have this question because the Shekhinah was there. So the idea that we started is that there is the question of the meaning of life. So, sorry? Yeah, because also by the Goyim, the Avodah Zorah was clear. So they had the Elohei Amim that were giving. You gave a korban to Avodah Zorah, you received. The more you better do. So we already explained that according to the Shara Oire. So things were clear. You did something good, you received good. You did something bad, you had stomachache. Understand? You had a stomachache because you did something which you should not have done. So, so this is the idea behind it. Otherwise, when is this whole psukim of Moshe Rabbeinu was never, so it's a theoretical also. When is this happening? It must have happened somehow. Today, we don't see it. You can make mitzvahs and still suffer. And people who make averas, they have good today. But there must be a time when it happens. So this is a time until the Pourim Beis Hamikdash, when suddenly when there was a darkness. And the Megillas Esther is actually this transition moment. I explained the Megillas Esther's transition moment where the name of Hashem was removed, in the sense that there used to be the name of Hashem, but it was completely removed. You won't find any name of Hashem in the Megillas Esther. It's showing that the time when the Gilui HaShechina is over. Live with it, accept it, and this is how you're going to live from now on. You're not going to have to do all kinds of strategies of making sure that you will live a good life. And the idea you can daven to Hashem, but Hashem is hidden behind the teva. So Hashem is there. We all know he was there. So if he was there, he's still there, but he's hidden behind the teva. And from now on, you'll have to live with the teva as the only structure, and you have to live with yourself. And therefore, the philosophy is the only way that can give you a bit of a sense, especially for the Goyim. We have the Torah that gives us, but for the Goyim, at least philosophy can help them. Now, to explain you Megillas Esther in Viktor Frankl's theory, I can say that the following. I'm a bit going quickly because of time constraints, but is the following. I will deny, I already said it once here in this place, and I will deny saying it again. So everything I say now, I will deny that I will say I didn't say it, and even if I said I didn't mean it, and even if I meant it, that really it's not the purpose, etc., etc. But what? Sorry, it's recorded, but I have control over the recording. The idea of Mordechai and Esther is something very, very interesting. We see something very strange, which I already saw. Mordechai is one of the biggest gedolim in our door, and his daughter, stepdaughter, is asked to go to Ahasuerus. How would today the Haredi Rov react in this perspective? So if a Haredi Rov, Kanievsky, his daughter, would have to go to.
After all, they tell him that if
No, I would tell her she should kill herself, run away, make herself ugly, take a knife and make a terrible ugliness. I don't know, but make sure that she will not be elected. He not. We went nicely, she went there, etc. So there's something very true. And then he also said, don't tell Ahasuerus that you are Jewish. Interesting. Also, the name Mordechai and Esther are Persian names. Yeah, Mardosh and Ishtar. Very strange, because Mordechai was born in Eretz Yisrael. So how come that as being born in Eretz Yisrael, he has changed his name to Persian names? So there's a theory, which I will just say it's a theory, and that's why don't take that further. Don't say it when you are by your Rov's table on Pourim, and when you give him money, please don't mention it. And even if you mention it, don't mention it in my name, because I still have a daughter to make a shidduch, and I don't want to. So there is a theory that Mordechai and Esther were what we call assimilated Jews. So originally they were assimilated Jews. That they were not, they wanted to, what is called here, the will to power. They had this will to power, what Adler calls a will to power, that we want to have more and more power and pleasure. And so this was a brilliant opportunity for Esther to go and become a queen. So she wanted to become queen. And so Mordechai was very happy about it. And therefore he told her, don't tell you're Jewish, because they are anti-Semites. And once they know that you're a Jew, they won't take you. So basically it was a kind of a complete assimilation. And at some point, she got elected. It was very good. But then things got sour with the story of Haman. And the whole story got sour. And then suddenly Mordechai has realized something very important, that there is a will for power, but for meaning is even stronger. And he says, don't know, that's because of nationalism, pride, or all kind of stories. Chazal tell him, why would they? He sold himself as an eved. he has
some priority.
some pride. Yeah, he was a proud person. Yeah,
What?
he was
No,
a
he's
proud.
not a proud person. I think somebody who would look now power. He would go first and then afterwards.
Yeah, but maybe he
Because his
thought that
priority
because
is the power.
his daughter is the queen, he
Yeah.
will not go to him because he believes that he will take over the power to
Uh-huh.
show Haman that I'm going to be soon. I'll be the, and Itaka became. He took over the head of Haman. So it was like that was his plan basically. So at some point in the middle, sometimes the message of a book can be in the beginning, in the middle, or the end. And maybe the message of this book of Megillah Esther is this words. Ki im hachish tachish beis azois, beva atzul yamel lahud mokamacher, ve'atu veisovichu tovedu, umio yodea im le'es kozois higat la malchus. I think that is the main message. If there is one message within this context, this would be the main message. Im le'es kozois higat la malchus. In other words, the whole idea is you have to find a meaning for life. It's not just for yourself, for your own pleasure, for your own living, for your own power, but also to find a meaning for life. In other words, is really the words im lo es kazois higat la malchus is to find a meaning for why have you became a queen. And this is the main message, is a transition from when Mordechai had a will to power to realizing that there is more than just will to power like Freud and Adler, but like Viktor Frankl says, there is also a will for meaning, is to find the meaning in their lives, in the meaning in the situation. And this is what he told her. There is a meaning why you're living. But why did you become a queen? Not because you want to satisfy will to power, but realize that there is a meaning to all this. And this meaning is what he was telling her. And only from that moment on, when he realized that there is the meaning to life, that he's called only from Perek Hey, that we are coining him, we are giving him a title, Mordechai HaYehudi. Until then, Mordechai is not called Mordechai Yehudi, only from Perek Hey. From Perek Hey, the Ishudi, but he is an original Ishudi, like somebody told me, So he's originally from a Yehudi, but he only from Perek Hey that we are coining, giving him a title, Mordechai HaYehudi. He only became Mordechai HaYehudi when he realized that there is a meaning for life which is bigger than just the meaning for will to power, for the power. And that is the whole story, which is basically telling us that since we are losing, we need now a meaning for life. This is the book to celebrate the finding of a meaning for life, which Esther understood, and she understood that she has to sacrifice herself for a higher purpose, which is saving the whole Jewish nation. And this is what it's all about.
Just like a little point from, because these things she developed it, but I'm sorry, Napoleon said far before. After the French Revolution, they removed all the decorations for the soldiers. What was the consequence of it? Basically, what he said, they went to the front where I will kill myself.
Yeah, why?
So Napoleon passed the Légion d'honneur. Why? Because he said a man will never die for his country, but he will die for a meaning and for honor.
For honor.
So
meaning,
that's why he plays back which is far before him. But
but it's far before him,
So I mean, this idea.
Far before Viktor Frankl, you mean? Of course.
That's it.
Yeah, but we do live, and he says we live today in the world that we live today in the last few decades in what he called existential vacuum. We don't live that anymore. A lot of people are searching for meaning. Today we are living this. That's why he says today, as we are speaking, 2023, there is a lot of people suffering from an existential vacuum where they don't have a meaning. They don't live a meaning. They've been pushed to live for pleasure and live for power, and then they realize that there is a meaning missing. And that is what he is pushing for.
That's the end of a civilization. Because the same with the Roman civilization. But then it comes back on the point you have people converting to Muslims or whatever.
They try to find a meaning in Islam, for example, or in Christianity, or even to Judaism, as well. To try to find a meaning, because they are in a search for a meaning. The whole idea also of socialism and communism is also only started in the last 200 years, because we are coming at the end of the Tikkun Olam. It's part of the Tikkun Olam, the realization. That's why I also save the planet, that the Goyim do is also part of finding a meaning to their lives. It's to make the tikkun olam, which is inherently in our genes inside.
No, that's true, but that's also what my parents told me about but the fact that community status, they said the mother country, or I don't know, you'd say mère patrie.
Vaderland, de moeder.
They try to kill the parents. That's why we have the kibbutz avim in counterparty, so they want to kill that. That's probably where you go, and in the Megillah, what you say, probably he took his new mother as Achashverosh and all of them, and then he came back to.
But that's the whole idea, is that it is a transformation. It's a movement of transformation of where people used to live for power as all the Nach. The whole Nach is about power struggles towards meaningful life. And that's the first time that we have it, because it's after the first Korban, it's a moment then we have to start searching for meaningful life. And this is the book of Megillah Esther. It is a transition. And from then on onwards,
this is the same problem, same problematic with Moshe Rabbeinu. When he leaves Egypt, he's looking for
Avraham Avinu also. Avraham Avinu can go before. Avraham Avinu had the same problem.
Mordechai is not a Jewish name. Like Moshe is like Jean-Pierre. That's not his Jewish name. And also the Torah gives a Jean-Pierre instead of
the Netziv explains that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Mitzri. That was a problem. He was a Mitzri. He struggled with his identity of being a Mitzri versus a Yehudi. He was not an Ivri. He was a Mitzri. Ish Mitzri. And when he said Ishmael, he was punished by Hashem because of that. He had this really identity crisis. That's why the religious Zionists explained that Theodor Herzl can be Moshiach, because we see that the Geula comes from people that assimilated and realize. I know, but I'm just explaining you. They make this idea because it is from assimilated Jews that the Geula is coming somehow. Why, I don't know.
We know
but
from Moshe Rabbeinu that he had the Jewish name.
We know, but he didn't use it. Also, Mordechai also.
Hashem, you don't use it. It's not like
I know.
People that
because his
Hashem himself
because his core identity was Mitzri and not Ivri. So it is a very strong. You really. I'm happy we are, because maybe you don't admit it yet. You don't admit it yet. I've got a feeling that we are getting. Now, what is a Tikkun Olam? Tikkun Olam is what he calls only in the beginning of his book, and he doesn't continue that in his Logotherapy, but he says that Tikkun Olam is what? How do you define Tikkun Olam? So it is this uniqueness and singleness which distinguishes each individual and gives a meaning to his existence as a bearing on creative work, as much as it does on human love. When the impossibility of replacing a person is realized, it allows the responsibility which a man has for his existence and is continuous to appear in all its magnitude. In other words, what gives you a meaning to life is something of magic. I understand, because later he doesn't develop that. It's something that only I can do. So I cannot be replaced by somebody else. So something that you can do gives you the feeling that this is something that I was created for, because only Ari Porush can do what he's just doing. So in other words, if he's only one, that means that this is the Tikkun Olam that I have to do, because there is a lot of Tikkun Olam that you can do. You can go and pick up rubbish from the floor on the streets. It's also Tikkun Olam. So what is really the Tikkun Olam that I have to do is something that you and you alone can perform in this world. If that is something that is really individual and unique, that gives you really the idea of, without me, this could not have happened. Now, that's a beautiful definition, right? You understand? So it's something unique. Now, where do we find it in the Torah? In Chazal, in Halacha? That's something that only you can do. Where do we find it in the Torah? For example, very good, excellent. That's the answer, but I'll give it a bit further. No, it's exactly that. When you're learning Torah, you're not allowed to be mevatel Torah, even for a mitzvah. When are you allowed to be mevatel Torah for a mitzvah?
For sure.
Only for a mitzvah, sheh?
That's gonna go out.
No.
Shaking the lulav and sukkahs.
No. What? That you're the only one that can do it. Something which is unique to you, then you have to do it, because that means that you were born for that purpose. That you are in this position. The pnimius of the halacha means that only for a mitzvah that only I can do and somebody else cannot do it, that means that this is my obligation to do. And therefore the Torah, Talmud Torah, as I said, this is only the tavlin. But if there is a tikkun olam that I have to do, then I have to do it. You have to be mevatel Torah. This is clearly a nice explanation of the unicity, of the uniqueness that a person is in order to be able to perform his obligation of the tikkun olam. I don't have the time, and maybe it's interesting for another shiur, is about suffering. He speaks a lot about the meaning for suffering, which is a bit difficult to understand. And to be honest, I need a little bit more time to go through in the explaining of giving a meaning to suffering, that the idea of a suffering is not something, of course, you should not go and try to suffer. We are not the Torah, not neither he is a sadomasochist, trying to suffer as much as possible, but there is a meaning to suffering. And this is something which also Chazal are coining Yisurim Shel Ahavo, and we can develop it further. And why didn't Chazal explain it the same way as he does? I have a whole idea already around it, and maybe for another shiur, because the idea is how can you see a meaning for a suffering? Okay, he's very good in it. You can read a few stories which he speaks about, even speaks about the rabbi. He came to him and spoke about that. But in any case, this is the meaning for suffering. Just by the way, I will go back to unicity. In the interview that I've sent you, he explains the Mishnah in Overs, who says, who listened to the video that I put on the Oil Yankel group? You didn't see it. He says, Mili means if I'm not doing it, who is going to do it? In other words, this is the purpose of doing something which only you can do, because that Mili, who is going to do it for me? So in other words, this is the idea of doing what is the unicity. In logotherapy, I'm not sure that they use it, because I didn't see it later in the book continue. The next part of the shiur is probably, some of you might have come only for that part, is about Zionism being the cause of. Now, there are two ways of seeing, so there are two existing ways today of seeing the relationship between the Shoah and Zionism. The Satmar view is that because of the Zionism came the Shoah as a punishment. That is the view of the Satmar Rov. And then you have the Manitou's view, if I can say his name, because it was Rav Sherki, that I have a neighbor that came to me, this Shreki, he is an Apikoros, and he says that the Zionism, who is leaving already, is that Zionism is the reason why the Shoah happened is because the Jews did not go up to Eretz Yisrael, right? It's because the Jews did not, they were anti-Zionists, the European Jews that were left over in Europe, they were anti-Zionists, and therefore the Shoah happened because they did not come up to Eretz Yisrael. So he said to me, how can he say that he's an Apikoros, and how is he allowed to say we don't know about the Shoah? So I answered them, if the Satmar Rebbe can say that the reason of the Shoah is Zionism, why can't another Rov say that is the other way around, right? It's not because he has a white beard and maybe because he's an Ashkenazi, that's why you as an Ashkenazi, you prefer him than to work. I mean, what is the purpose? Why can you not, is as respectable as the other one to be able to give his own opinion, especially as he reacts only on the Satmar Rov, to say if the Satmar Rov says that it is Zionism that caused, then he says that that it is because Jews were anti-Zionist, that because of that the Shoah happened. So it's more a reaction against the Satmar Rov. No, so Rav Sheki writes it, and I heard it from Manitou. Yeah, I heard it in a shiur video of Manitou, but he saw it in Rav Sheki Sefer, who brings it down, but very cautiously. What? I have a very good, loyal friend. I like him very, very much. He's my neighbor. And I borrowed him the book of Rav Sheki, which I should not have done. And he actually came back with this.
But the Shoah is extremist.
But let me. I will give a third explanation, and I will say indeed that there is a connection, there is a correlation, and there is maybe a causality. We all know, and this is a personal opinion. If you don't like it, you throw it away. If it's wrong, then I'm sorry. Then, as I said, you just lost 5 minutes of your life. But let me give you an explanation. There is a Kabbalistic view, as we understood already, that there are 70 nations. Those 70 nations have got 70 gods, Elohei Amim, that are what we call the backside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this is the idea. Those gods are what we call kinuyim of Hashem. So then they have names which are the kinui of Hashem, but they are the backside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And each nation has a god, and the god of their gods is the Samach Mem. The Samach Mem, we don't pronounce his name. There's a fear, Haredism, we are always afraid, therefore we don't pronounce his name, and because we don't want to call him by pronouncing his name, and therefore the Samach Mem is the head. Now the Samach Mem, I saw in the Sefer, he is actually the people of Amalek. So Amalek is Be'etzem, is a nation within a nation. Be'etzem is within Esau, but he's also a separate nation. And the god of Amalek is also the god of the gods in the element of those 70 nations. So that is the back of Hashem. So as long as there is no nation, the Jewish nation, which has their god is Yud-Kei Vov-Kei, is the god of the gods, Elokei Hu Elohim, as I explained you. Our god is the god of the gods. We have directly our God, national God, is also the God, the creator, and is also the God that controls all the other gods. Then there is no competition. There's no competition. So what Koil HaTorah explains is the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. What is Amalek? Amalek, why did he attack us? Amalek attacked us because we were going to Eretz Yisrael, and Asher Korucho Baderech. What does it mean, Asher Korucho Baderech? He cooled you down. So Klal Yisrael were already excited to go into Eretz Yisrael. It was not easy because, as I explained you, we Jews, we don't like nationality, we like spirituality. But we were already, it took us time to get us warmed up. And what did Amalek do? He said, no. He made a war against us when we were weak, and suddenly the enthusiasm got down. So it is the enthusiasm of Zionistic feelings that we had, nationalistic feelings that we had, that this is what Amalek is trying to do. Amalek, what he tries to do is to avoid us becoming a nation. He doesn't want us to become a nation, doesn't mind us to be in Golus, as long as we are not part of a nation. So the moment that we came out of Mitzrayim and we were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael, Amalek came and he was Korcho. Korcho means from Kar, he cooled us down. Haredism would explain Korcho is from Yiddishkeit. He tried to cool us down from spirituality. And Hebraism wants to see cooling down from nationalism, from going into Eretz Yisrael. So the main purpose of Amalek is trying to cool us down. So from the moment that we have a feeling that we want to go up to Eretz Yisrael, no, don't go, it's not good, you will die, it will be difficult. This is Amalek. So the Koil HaTorah, which is a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, he explains that the Rabbonim that actually cool down, he talks before, much before, we're talking about in the time of the Netziv, and before that, that they try to reduce the Rabbonim that are telling the people, don't go up to Eretz Yisrael. This is, he calls the Amaleki that are within them, that is telling them not to go up to Eretz Yisrael. So he calls that each person of us, we have this Amaleki, and therefore we have this cooling down of going up to Eretz Yisrael. It's called the Amalek, and therefore it is that keeps us from going to Eretz Yisrael. So that's written in the Koil HaTorah. Yeah, it talks about the Rabbonim who has the Amaleki that pushes them to. Now, what happened? So we know already Amalek, Kocho is against nationalism. Now, what about Haman? We all say that Haman is the whole idea why we're reading Haman is because we assume that Haman was an Amaleki. And so what happens is something very interesting. When Haman happens to try to kill us, it was at the time that the Ramban explains why is the Mukaf Choimo also on the 15th and the Prozim on the 14th. So he explains the Mukas Choimo as being, we don't have the time anymore, but you can see, I will just read it from the art scroll, mamish in the beginning, the first daf. So if you want to see the first daf, so הרמב"ם מבאר את העניין ברחובו, והרי תמצית דבורו בזמן נס פורים, חלק גדול מעם האורץ יושב באורוב בארץ ישראל. A big part of the Jews already went back to ארץ ישראל, אחרי ששוב לשם מגולוס בובל, ברישיון קוירש, ברישיון he received permission from קוירש, כמה שנים לפני כן, they already received permission to go up to Eretz Yisrael, and they were already living in Eretz Yisrael. כאשר גוזר אחשוורוש להשמיד להרוג לאבד כל היהודים, היותו בארץ ישראל בכלל סכון זו, וכפי שנאמר בזה בנחמיה, שכל העם מסובב and they would have killed them, etc. But the ones that were basically the ones that were living in a book of Choimo, the ones that had already a wall of war, the Jews in Eretz Israel, they were not in that danger because they could protect themselves. So they did not participate in the simcha of Pourim. So in the beginning, only the Jews that lived in the open cities, they were at danger, but the Jews that lived in Eretz Israel in their own autonomy, they could protect themselves. They didn't see the danger of Haman because they could protect themselves. And so therefore only later.
Going against the Persian Empire.
Yeah, but they gave permission to the people, not the Persian, it was not the Persian military that would go, it would be the local military that had to go and kill the Jews. So they sent out, it was a local police. The police, they would go and try to kill me. I'll shoot him down 2 minutes and it's going to be over. So they were not feeling threatened. That's what the Ramban explained. But you see here, there was already, he says, a beginning of a Zionistic movement of Klal Yisrael going back to Eretz Yisrael in the time of Purim. So this is also the time when Haman started to kill Jews, to wanting to stop that movement and by eradicate all the Jews to avoid them also going to Eretz Yisrael. So you see a second time where it happened. And so we can say, and only theoretically, we can say that this is also the Shoah. Because of the Zionism movement that existed and became very strong, as I know, I am coming from there, so there were a lot of Jews living in Eretz Yisrael in the time, that suddenly Amalek started to realize that there is that the Jewish nation is going to become independent, they will become a nation, that Amalek had no other choice but to stop us. And this is could be explained by the Shoah. This will of Haman, of Hitler, which we assume being an Amaleki, or at least he is within the concept of Amaleki, is actually to stop us. So what we saw in Asher Kocho Baderech, when we were going into Eretz Yisrael, what we saw in Megillas Esther, where Haman, the Amaleki, when already the Jews starting to build up already the nation, when he wanted to stop that, and when Zionism started, yes, it's because the Zionism started that Amalek wanted to stop that. So, yes.
This view, it's like there's no like visible hate. Ideology.
It's an ideological, yeah, but to be honest, if you read Mein Kampf, it is an ideology. It is an ideology.
It's opposite.
No, there is an idea. I mean, Mein Kampf is a pure that we want to conquer the world, and this idea of wanting the Muslims, they also believe. That's why the Mufti of Jerusalem was with Hitler. They also believe that the Jews will conquer the world through Jerusalem. So there will come one day, somebody will conquer the world and it will be settled in Jerusalem. So they also foresee that. But they think that we want to conquer the world. They don't understand we don't want to conquer the world. We want them to be independent and all with their diversity, but we want to be the light. We want to give them morality. That's all. If they have a shaila in fighting, they will come to us, and then the Sanhedrin will solve their problems. That's why Sanhedrin have to know 70 languages in order for when the nation is coming to be able to understand and to be able to answer them their needs. Yeah, but what they did is in order to make able to kill, how can you kill? How can you ask a decent German to kill? So they have to start the propaganda and making us to become subhumans. But there was an ideology. It started from the ideology. The Nazis, they had this meeting in Wannsee. It was an ideology. They realized, they also had, when you read the transcripts, yeah, but what about the Jews that served in the First World War? So they had the kind of, they were not like, those people were not completely, they had an ideology. And the ideology can be driven by the Amaleki drive to stop us from becoming a nation. And so, yes, you can say, even though the third point, you can say that it is Zionism that caused the Shoah in such a concept. So, yes. Sorry. Let's Yeah. No, but he saw anyway. Maybe Amalek saw. What Hitler didn't say, Amalek saw that there are so many Jews that are going up already to Eretz Yisrael, like in the time of Haman. A lot of Jews are already going and settling in Eretz Yisrael, and so that was a moment for Amalek to jump in and to stop it. So, in short, just to summarize, we saw that the main idea is the Tikkun Olam. I didn't mention the Bechira because that he mentions also a lot. Nearly every part of this book is for me like a wow, because it confirms everything that we said in the last few shiurim about responsibility, about the idea, the freedom. Even he speaks about the Gan Eden, which I explained you, the Eitz Hadas, and he also mentions the Gan Eden as being the main point of Bechira, that leaving the Gan Eden is when we have to start making choices. We have a freedom of will, but it also means that we have to make choices. That what is important is that there's no halacha that will tell you what you have to do for Tikkun Olam. So why? Because it's not up to Rabbonim or to the Torah to tell you what is a Tikkun Olam. It is like the Torah can only tell you bein toiv l'ra, but cannot answer you bein toiv l'toiv. So you have to choose yourself. Whatever you choose, whatever you believe is something which is unique, that will be this will be the Tikkun Olam. We saw this idea is driven by Rabbeinu Tam, that the Iker is the Echeret and the Torah is only the Tofu. That in other words, the work is the Iker. We saw the therapy is to find a will for meaning. That I explained you the Miguel Aseste, which is a transformation from will to power to a will for meaning. That im leesko zois higat la malchus. This is maybe the only words that is the core words according to this. That is really the essence when we are in the darkness in our time, when the Nevi'im are gone, then we have a search for meaning for life, trying to find a meaning for life. And this was the most beautiful meaning for life for Esther, that suddenly her own drive for power, she could turn into something beautiful and saving her whole nation, which is actually the epitome of an example of how a person can use that meaning for life for the good. And then we saw that this unicity, the unicity we see also in the fact that in Batel Torah, we also spoke a little bit about Yisurim, and we didn't speak about responsibilities and the obligation, but I don't have time anymore. And then at the end we spoke about the three reasons, if there are any trying to find reasons of the Shoah, is either because of Zionism, or because of the lack of Zionism, or because Zionism existed, that Amalek had to act as he acted already during the coming into Eretz Yisrael. There were 3 times when we came back to Eretz Yisrael. It was at Mitzrayim, it was Golus Bovel, and it was just before the Medinas Eretz Yisrael. And in those 3, every time before that, there was kind of Amalek that interacted to kill us. It is just before we came to Israel, just before we came back from Bovel, and just before we actually started to create our own state. Maybe we will to the Bias, Goel, Tzedek, Bimheiro, V'yomeinu, Omein. And have a happy Pourim. And don't forget, Pourim is all about eating and drinking. Spirituality we have to find through the eating and the drinking and the enjoying and the olam hazeh, rather than a spiritual growth. But a person that davens on Purim, everything that person davens on Purim will be heard, and Metz Hashem, all the tefillas during the Purim should be heard, and we should use the Purim, the Toyeles, to be mashlim, the tachlis that we are here for this world.
Amen.
J'ai eu une discussion hier avec